Hello, hello, and welcome everyone to In Time. My name is Nicholas Lamar Suter. Um, first of all, to Daryl's point, we cut the intro length in about half. Still going to try to cut it some more, but in case those of you who haven't noticed, the intro is now about half the length it used to be. As for uh, the standing by music, we just do the standing by. We do the standing by so notifications come out and everybody gets their notifications before we go. Actually, the intro is long enough. We could probably just use the intro for that. But anyways, but that was a special intro that I had done with "Fix You" by Coldplay. I'd done it a while back. It's not an intro. It was just standing by. And then I think I reloaded a slightly older version of the interface. That was still good to go. A few hiccups. The producer here is obviously incompetent. So, at any rate, thank you very much for joining us. And we will. So I think this is going to be a really good show today. We always love having Dr. Carrier on. But we also have, I just want to let you guys know, first of all, if you like what you see, if you enjoy the show, please hit like and subscribe. It's a great way to help out the channel. You can also become a patron. Patron rewards, behind-the-scenes stuff. Usually, we have the patron hangout. Truth be told, I love Patron, and I love that we have one, and I love trying to make those rewards something special and something nice. But on the flip side, I'll be honest with you, I don't like the idea that the only way to get back-end access is with that. So you can come to our Discord, you can talk to me, you can talk to other people, and we do hangouts for everybody. It's not just the patrons, but patrons, maybe, a little something extra special if you want to participate that way. Even if you don't, like and subscribe just helps the channel. So having said that, we've got tomorrow, Nate the Lawyer is going to be coming on. He's going to be coming on with Joe's Serious Mind and or possibly Fox. We haven't figured out yet exactly the lineup, but Nate will be there, and we're going to be discussing sort of the recent rash of police problems, and he's going to go over the law with us. He's going to go over a couple questions I have about what is Man 2. I know what Murder 1 is, Murder 2, Murder 3, Man 2, Man. So we're going to talk about that. He's been looking into it. He's also going to look into the George Floyd case, because he's been covering that quite extensively, and that's going to a jury early next week. I think Monday is closing arguments, so before the closing arguments, we're going to sit down, talk about what's happened. He's going to clue us in with that. I think it's going to be great. Next week, we're going to have on Tart. The entire crew from Tart is going to be here, and no topic. You know what? We're going to wing it. We're going to talk. I have a lot of things I do want to talk to them about. I know a lot's going to come up. We share a lot of things in common. Some things I think we disagree with, but I think it's going to be a great discussion. Looking forward to having them here. After that, we're going to have on Neil 604 Atheist. Now, we've already had him on. We did his deconversion story, which was about time somebody did that. So we've already done that, but now we're going to have him on just to chat, and we're going to make up our show with Randolph Richardson. Richardson was supposed to be on last night. I don't know. It feels like my voice sounds absolutely terrible, but some people have said they can't tell the difference. Losing my voice a bit, sore throat. Randolph said I should take the day off. Anybody who's watched this show for any length of time knows how well I listen to that advice. Decided to listen, and I'm grateful, because I am actually somewhat better for today, and we want to make sure that... Mike is a little rough. All right. I'm curious if my mic suddenly sounds better now. It may be that it's coming in off the headset mic, so I'm going to check my mic source, make sure that it's coming from the right spot. But in the meantime, before I get to that, today we're going to be discussing Hitler's Table Talk. Now, that is an interesting topic. I think it's always interesting to learn a little bit more about... Sorry, apologies. It's always a little bit more, and we all know what he said in his speeches. We all know what he did, but what was it like in somewhat more intimate settings? I think a little macabre. And I sit there and say, why is this important? Well, I think it's important to understand how the mind of somebody like this works, and how, in some cases, it's exactly what you'd expect. In some cases, it's a little different. So we have on today a man who actually, I was going to say, literally wrote the book on this. So we're going to talk about his contribution to the subject. But until then, let's bring out Dr. Richard Carrier. Dr. Carrier, how are you?
Hey. Doing all right.
It sounds like your mic is working better than mine, which, considering I'm the idiot producing this thing, you'd think. But okay, fine.
Yeah.
So the biggest question
I
is...
don't know if that's the audience.
So the biggest question, I get this all the time, and it's
You
one
sounded.
that,
I thought you sounded great.
oh yeah, well, who knows? I could have. Let me check the source right now.
Your headphone mic.
Yeah, no, this looks like the source is correct, but who the heck knows? Because there's a couple of different things going on. So I'm going to look into it and try to do it without muting myself. But my wife will throw in a 50 if I do that. But we'll. So she wants me to sound good on the show. She's just like, can we shut him up the rest of the time? So let's see. But I'd like
Yeah. As long as the audience is getting good audio, it's fine.
Yeah, well, it sounds like they're not. It looks like they're getting the audio from my boom mic. So I'm going to try to figure out, or from the headset mic, which it's not supposed to do, but I'll deal with it. Also because I can't project the way I normally would. It's probably not so. But enough about me. No, you know what? Let's talk about me more. So you see, so let me just tell you, it was a rough week. And enough about me. Dr. Carrier, so let's talk about now. People keep asking what was Hitler's table talk. So, what on earth was this, and why is it important?
Gosh, that's a long story.
Okay, and you're breaking up.
Well, because see, the thing is, there's myths and legends.
Mm-hmm.
Myth about what it is, it really is, and that's a rabbit hole. I'll start with the legend. The legend is that I used to just randomly rant in the bunker during the war, like during tea time, during lunch, over scotches at night and stuff like that. And Terry wanted to sketch down little pithy things that Hitler said, and he wanted to organize it into a new book for the victorious Third Reich, right? Victorious Third Reich, but that was the plan, supposedly. This is the legend, and so these two, there and various other like secretaries wrote these things down, like on like little note cards or whatever, supposedly, allegedly, and he compiled this manuscript with kind of random select rants from Hitler at various times, and in the bunker. So it's supposed to be candid. It's supposed to be like the real Hitler, and it's supposed to be. There's the big debate over whether Hitler knew the notes were being taken, and there's a lot of. It's just crazy, different myths and legends about this. And then so Bormann had collected all of this stuff, and 1944, shit's hitting the fan. They're realizing maybe we're not going to survive this thing. So he sent supposedly this whole manuscript to his wife. In Munich or Berlin or something, and then she fled during the 1945. She fled to Italy, was caught there, ended up in a POW camp, and died. And then a certain person who we'll meet later came along and bought the manuscript from her. Now he was going to publish this. The person I should mention is infamous Swiss Nazi banker Francois Genoud. I'll tell you more about him. He's a super shady character, like something right out of a novel. And he's also connected to some forgeries and stuff. So it's like, this is not the greatest source stories or something. And but he was going to publish, and one of the secretaries who had left had kept notes. This is all legend, mind you. This is the myth.
Okay, so this is not, yeah, okay.
This is
what the reality is. Okay.
This is what we've been told. Correct. This is all what we've been told, and what I believed when I wrote my article. When I get to that part of it, it turns out I was wrong. I was believing sources, and I shouldn't have been. So he was going to publish. This other secretary was going to publish his version of the notes, and so there's lawsuits between these guys on the notes. And all kinds of like scandal and weird stuff going on, but eventually it gets published in English. The only complete edition until 1980, the only complete edition available was in English. Not even the original German. Some of the original German was available, and even that was not the same German that was translated into English, supposedly, allegedly, mythologically. And so that supposedly there's this from 1941 to 1944. There's a random selection of rants over tea time and sandwich, whatever. and it was this big deal. It was published. The English edition was published by Hugh Trevor Roper, this famous British historian, in the big splash version, and a lot of historians rely on that, even though it's not in the original German, and a lot of them weren't looking at the original German. And then even by 1980, when there was the original German, supposedly, mythologically, a lot of historians wouldn't look at it. They would only go from the English translation. And how this becomes relevant, I mean, obviously historians have antiquary interest in the rants of Hitler in the bunker, right? Like you said in the introduction, makes sense. But there's actually a bigger political reason why this is a really important source, and it involves how I got into it. There's really two sidetracks. One is Holocaust denialism. Holocaust talk. So there's stuff in the table talk that they claim they can use to prove that Hitler didn't know about the Holocaust. So the authenticity of the table talk does become relevant to Holocaust historians. But the angle that got me into it is that there are these like super anti-Christian rants, like Hitler's like a total anti-Christian atheist speaker in several passages in here. So Christians love the table talk. They quote the table talk all the time, showing that Hitler was an atheist, ergo atheism leads to Hitler, ergo atheism is bad. Right. So that's the thing.
I've never heard that argument in my life. That's brand new. That's what? Nobody said that.
So now you see why the table talk becomes desperately relevant. What is this source document? Is it reliable? And so that's key. Well, so there were particularly three quotes in particular that were circulating a lot on the internet and everywhere else. And Dan Barker of the Freedom from Religion Foundation, this was back in, I think, 03, I think is when he got in touch with me. So he knew I was doing my dissertation at Columbia University and that I knew languages. So I German and French. I read German and French scholarship and things like that. So he came to me and he said, look, there are these Christians who keep giving me these Hitler quotes from this thing called the paper talk. I find it anyway. Could you check to see if like the English translation is reliable? Like, is it authentically representing the German? Is there some context that's missing? Like, what could you for notes? All right, and they were like 2 or 3 sentences, maybe a paragraph at most, like short paragraph at most. And I said, yeah, sure, I'll do that for $50. So the Freedom from Religion Foundation cut me a $50 research grant, and that led to a rabbit hole. Yeah, well, I thought it would just be a quick look at like maybe 5 sentences, right? And no, it was a massive rabbit hole. This was, oh my God. So no, it led to the strangest sequence of events. And so the first thing I found is that the English does not match the German, hardly at all. In fact, like radically different. Like we're not even talking about like errors in translation bad. And I was like, how could the English be this different from the German? Like, I don't even understand how that happened. And while I was doing the research, I found that there was a French edition that goes way back, published by François Genoud. And the French edition has all the bogus shit in it, and the English is a direct translation from the French. Now, somehow, mind you, I'm looking at this in 2003. The English edition came out in 1953. The French in the late 40s, and the piece of the German came out in the early 50s. And for all this time, no one noticed. No one in the entire field of Hitler studies for 50 plus years noticed that the English translation was fraudulent, that it was actually based on the jimmied French translation. Now, there's a big question as to what on earth was François Genoud doing? Why did he make up these quotes? Why did he change everything Hitler said and only do it in the French? Like, we don't know the answer to this question, but that's what he did. And I thought it was very strange, this discovery. It was like, why? Wait a minute. The book claims, Hugh Trevor Roper's book, The Table Talk, and that's what it's called. You look for it on Amazon or whatever. It's The Table Talk. And it claims that it's from the original German of this manuscript that Genoud supposedly bought off the wife of Martin Bormann in a POW camp in Italy, right? But it's not. It's translated from the French, and the French is bogus. right? So anyway, it took me ages to figure all this out and get it all. And I realized that since no one had noticed this before in the field of Hitler studies, like it's not even my field, right? So I'm like depending on scholars in this field, and they don't even know this. And so I'm talking to some major scholars in the field, like some of the archivists and big figures, and they're saying, yeah, we've not noticed this. You should publish this. So I wrote up an article for German Studies Review. And so I have a peer-reviewed article on why Hitler's table talk is not reliable, or why the English translation at least. And I point out, I do point out in the article that even the German, there's question marks about it. But that wasn't my task, so I left that open. So there's a lot more research to be done on this, I said. I put through in some of my speculations about source criticism and which version might be more reliable, yada yada. But that wasn't the point of the article. The article was to point out and prove, which I did. I proved that it was based on the French. Not only was it based on the French, it was incompetently based on the French, and that's how I could prove it was based on the French, because they made mistakes in translating French into English that can only be made when translating French into English, because French has certain grammatical structures that can easily trip you up that don't exist in German or any other language. So, and you could just show, you could see, yeah, they made this mistake right here. It tracks exactly the French. So even the people who are translating it weren't very good at French. Okay, so the English is just garbage. You just can't use the English. And so when this article came out, Enigma was just about to come out with a new edition of the Hitler's Table Talk, and big scandal, oh fuck. We have this English translation that we're going to try and push. Now it's been proven unreliable. So they even came to me and asked me, do you want to do your own translation? And I'm like, I'm not a Hitler historian. I don't know. I don't want to do that. And we couldn't afford it. It would be way too expensive because this book is.
You've hopefully we haven't lost you. So to apply, we've been having intermittent issues with Dr. Carrier's connection, and we had a good 5 minutes before the show where it was very reliable, and then it sort of cut out. There he is. Yeah. There he is. He is back. I do want to ask you before you continue. I've noticed that throughout the whole history of your career, it seems that you get sucked into these things pretty much. It has nothing to do with the historicity of Jesus, right? This wasn't, you're not sitting there saying this is a great time. You just, you just get sucked into these things. Is that?
Yeah. Yeah, someone hires me to research a thing, and then it just explodes it. So now the new Enigma edition cites me, and so many Hitler historian books now have a footnote. Richard Carrier found the tables are not right. 2004 is when my article published for German Studies Review. Now, about 10 years later, a Swedish professor, Mikael Nilsson, was doing some research on this and found my article and found that he was intrigued by all the question marks, I couldn't solve. I was there are all these other questions. So he went full fucking Dan Brown on this. He did a massive research project. He's talking to living witnesses. He's traveling the earth. He's looking at he's going to binding losses, and it's just amazing what he's contracts. German 1950s German court case records. It's just amazing. And so he did this early. The things that I got wrong in the original article, and has revised those, and pointed out instead that I was too good this myth about the Orpheus manuscript. That was what all the reliable historians were saying, and I was well, that's what the sources say. I'm just gonna. But no, he came in and said, "Don't check at all. There's all kinds of shady shit." And his book, he came out with Hitler, incredible story of the so-called table talk, and it is an incredible story in every possible sense of that word. By the way, I highly recommend it because it shows several things. One is all Nazis are liars. So that's one thing I've learned from this book.
Breaking
there
news.
Are so many liars telling so many lies that he has that he's exposed, and it's to the point I'm like, oh, I see. If there is a Nazi, they are a liar. That's a no. I'm astonished at the lies. Like everybody lives and there's this story he told. Oh, this is a lie because here's the evidence proving that it's a lie. I'm like, oh my god! Every story that he goes in every little trends is just. But the other thing is it shows that he has access to all the stuff I mentioned, audio recordings, in the period, journal articles, freaking court documents, massive collections of letters, like original copies of letters exchanged between people, and some living witnesses, or people like children of the living witnesses, and so on. Like, he has the amount of information he can marshal is incredible, and comes nothing near what, like, not even a fraction near what we have for like the origins of Christianity, where we have none of this, like have almost nothing. And yet, this complete myth of this document prevailed. It became the historian consensus of this document up until he and I exposed it. But it shows that even he can prove all these lies, but he can't get at the truth. Like, there's so many loose ends that he's like, well, I don't know. I can tell you what's possible, but I never really got to the bottom of all of these stories. So, like, even someone who has massive access to records and information is using modern critical historical skills and 50 years of these events, right? Even he can't fucking nail down the truth of what happened. And it's like, can you imagine how much it would be like 2000 ago, liar again. So it's interesting to see how difficult it is to get at the truth of stories. There's like all the intrigue and all the interesting criminal activity, and art thieves are involved. Like, there's a whole bunch of stuff in the story. So it's a good read. I highly recommend it, and it's a good example of what kinds of documentation you can get in this.
So, and we've actually got a link to that in the description, and so we've got that. Now, the other thing I'm thinking at this point is we keep breaking up pretty consistently, and sometimes we've got you for about 2 minutes straight, and then it starts to break up again. So, how's your phone reception over there, or how's your Skype on your phone? If you want to try either Skype on your phone, or you could try Skype on your computer, that may still be more reliable. So I think we should switch to Skype and either do it on your phone or on your computer.
Are you sure it's the platform? Might just be I have shitty internet up here.
Oh yeah, but your phone may then in that case still connect better. Now we actually our phone number. Yeah,
actually it won't, because okay. I have no cell service up here, so it would be the same Wi-Fi.
would be just as screwed. All right. Well, the only reason the platform might be able to help is it depends on. I mean, Skype does do a few things to try to strengthen the signal and error redundancy in the signal that you don't necessarily get in the. But it's
rather than try to do that, let's see if we can move on, and then see if you can like ask questions about things that disappeared. What I said. So like, what did you miss or want to hear more about?
Yeah, Porpoise says it's the Wi-Fi connection, and I agree with me. You don't. We have more solipsists in our live chat than you can well, you only need to shake a stick at one, I suppose. But nonetheless, we have more solipsists in our live chat than you can shake a stick at. I would tell the joke. This one I think may have been dropped by Porpoise in our Discord, but I have to tell the joke. So sorry for those of you who've heard it before. Solipsist, deontologist, and a utilitarian walk into a bar. The utilitarian says, buys a beer for everybody and says, to the greatest good for the greatest number. Yay, okay. The deontologist then goes up, buys a beer for everybody, and says, to always doing the right thing. Yay. Solipsist goes up, buys one beer, drinks it down. The deontologist and the utilitarian go to the solipsist and say, hey, why didn't you buy a beer for everyone? Solipsist says, I just did.
Righto.
$2. The sinister porpoise. Can Dr. Carrier use an Ethernet cable? She's thinking if you hard line in that may solve the problem.
Yeah, no, my Wi-Fi signal is excellent. So it is the internet. I live on a mountain, so the internet up here is weird. I live in a mountain in California, and my internet company is run in New Jersey. But
okay, so
sometimes it's really awesome, and sometimes it's really not. Yeah, I mean that like explanation here, and I can't fix that, unfortunately. Some nights it's good, sometimes it's not.
The only thing you can consider is what is it? The satellite, which they lie their asses off. Now, I'm not saying they're Nazis. but they're Nazis because they lie. They sit there, they talk about because I calculated like the speed of light to go hit the satellite and bring it back, and the ping rate is more than twice what it should be. But admittedly, they do have a problem with their actual ping rate, because you got to go 80,000, however many, whatever it is, up into the air, and then bounce it back, and then you got to do all this other stuff. But it's fast and reliable short of that. So unless you're gaming, but anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there have been some questions, and Titan's absolutely correct. Ping me makes it easier for me to see them, or super chat, which, by the way, Porpoise, we really appreciate the $2 super chat. Thank you. So hopefully you'll be a little more reliable. Yeah. So what I'm going to do, folks, is if Dr. Carrier starts cutting out, I'm going to do the usual practice. I'm going to just fill in for him and make shit up. So we'll nobody see what's happening behind the curtain.
That seems to be how the history of the table talk also
that's totally appropriate. So
came about. So could I get to the punchline of what turns out to be true?
Please.
We don't know. But here's I can tell you. Why the hell
are you on here? Okay, hold on. Because this was like months into planning. You're like, I'm not available for months and all this other stuff. I could have picked someone out of our damn live chat to say, well, I don't know. What the hell? Why are you here?
Okay, we know some things. We know something. So we can tell you, these are the things I can tell you. Don't use the English. The English translation is completely unreliable. Hitler did not say the things that Christians claim about Christians. Hitler did say things, well, he's portrayed in this document in the original German of saying things that are anti-Catholic. He was clearly very rabid anti-Catholic, and his Christianity is very much in line with positive Christianity, which is Nazi sect of Christianity at the time. And you can tell because Hitler's advocating some of the weird views of positive Christianity, like that Jesus was an Aryan. He was actually birthed by a Roman soldier. So they take the Jewish polemic against Christians that Mary was raped by a Roman soldier whose name sounded like virgin in Greek. And so they were joking about, she wasn't really a virgin. It was really Panther who stripped her. That was a sort of a polemic of the Jews against Christians. Well, the Nazis said, we like that. We're going to take that and say that's true, that actually happened. So therefore, Jesus is an Aryan, and all the stuff in the Bible is Jesus ragging off the Jews. Oh, those greedy Jews, and it's all anti-Semitic, and Jesus is one of us. And the thing is that this weird idea that Paul was this Jewish corrupter of Christianity, so that the Pauline letters are being rejected as heretical, basically. Paul is this dirty little Jew who ruined Christianity. Consequently, Catholicism, which comes from Paul, is crypto-Judaism, right? So, and so there, then they rag on a lot of Protestant anti-Catholicism is like ragging on their belief in transubstantiation and so on.
One quick question. Now, if I recall, it was only in Corinthians, which is Paul, where in the New Testament there's any problem with homosexuality. It's Paul. So now, but the atheists, homosexuals, but homosexuals definitely were tossed in. Was there a separate? And I don't want to derail too much, but I just found this interesting because if Paul and then Paul was ostensibly responsible, either was by surrogate or was responsible for the whole purpose of the whole notion of a pope. Was Paul? If Paul's out, on what grounds would they be against some of the things that he said, including but not limited to homosexuality is bad?
Yeah, beats me.
Okay.
Can't really answer that question.
I don't know, Nick.
I'm not saying.
Let me.
Look,
I'm taking my $50 back. I'm taking my $50 back.
Not only are Nazis liars, they also are not logical. So Nazi worldviews are irrational and bizarre. That's all I can tell you.
So Captain Obvious has thus far taught us that Nazis are liars and make shit up. Okay, thank you.
Make shit up, yeah, right. And it doesn't make sense. Yeah, right.
Okay. Sorry,
no, that's
absolutely true.
Absolutely true. Gosh, what was I even talking about? Oh, the Christian stuff. So anyway, the Christian quotes that were floating around are from the English edition. Can't use it. Okay, so now there are still some anti-Christian things that's in the German, but there are actually criticisms of Catholicism, not Christianity. And you find Hitler saying all kinds of things like, he believes he's going to go to heaven and meet all these cool people. He believes he's doing God's will. He believes in a creator. He thinks the one thing that separates man from animal, we know that there's and therefore, he's rags on atheists. So absolutely Hitler's not an atheist, right? The table talk proves that if we take it as actually things Hitler said. And in the German, but the problem is that we have multiple German versions, more versions than I was even aware of. I found that there were 3 versions floating around when I published my article I think I published in 03 or 04. In any event. So there's multiple German versions and they disagree. They're not in complete agreement. They don't disagree with each other wildly, but and then different have entries that aren't in other manuscripts. And we know Martin Bormann was editing all this stuff. In fact, we have some of his handwritten changes. We have some sheets that were recovered at the end of the war that were recovered by soldiers. They found some sheets of this, and they have Bormann's handwritten changes, and those ended up in the German version that gets published. So we know the stuff that's in there is heavily edited by Bormann. And this is important. Oh, and some of the entries are written by Bormann, right? And even the ones not written by him, he's edited them. And the problem here is that Bormann was an infamous atheist. Not only an atheist, he was an anti-Christian, and he was like barely tolerated amongst all of this. But he was like one of those few Nazis who actually was an ontological materialist. He was an atheist, very. And like Nazis, you had the neo-pagans who wanted to get rid of Christianity and replace it with proper German paganism. You had hardcore anti-Semitic Catholics. You had hardcore anti-Semitic Protestants. You had the positive Christians who were inventing their whole new sect just for Nazism. And then, of course, you had atheists like Bormann. So you had a variety of different people. Hitler himself was not like Bormann, but Bormann was. So when you realize that all these sayings of Hitler that Bormann is collecting to put into a book that he's going to use to publish for the Third Reich, or the new, the new great book for the Third Reich, and he's editing the shit out of it and writing his own entries, it makes it hard to say that this is actually the authentic voice of Hitler, right? I've lost your video. Are you still there?
Yeah, sorry, I was transferring over. I just was going to have to get up for a minute, so often I shut the camera. Well, no, it's just like, well, no, you know what? I normally, so here's what I do. Normally, I shut the shield if like I have to get up and something, because I think it's you don't want to. Yeah. But in your case, I don't really care if I show my back to you. I'm just fucking walking out of here. You just keep me around. But okay, I ain't gonna be here. Yes, so we have a problem. Even the original German is not necessarily Hitler. There was also part of the mythology was that these notes were taken by stenographers, so that they are literally word for word Hitler. But it turns out, and this is Mikhail Nielsen here, found out tons of things. But one of the things he found out was a lie, that was a myth. That in fact there were no stenographers. There were just these secretaries who would jot their notes down in their own words and their own thoughts, sometimes a day later, right?
Well, so and sometimes like the guests as well, right? So he'd have guests over, and the notes come from the secretaries and some of the higher ranking SS.
Oh, that was another thing, yeah. So, yeah, Nielsen has found, like, there are some points of other people who publish where there are those little overlaps. You can look to see the reliability of the table talk. And Mikhail Nielsen found some of those things, and he found examples where in the notes that survived, some attributed to Hitler were actually else. So that's another example. Like, so the stuff that's being attributed to Hitler might not have been what Hitler himself said. It might have been someone else. I heard, and the notes take.
Last thing I heard was the stuff that survived.
Was?
The last thing I heard, you cut out for a second, so it was the stuff that survived. Okay. And then,
I don't. Yeah. So there are other people who are in the bunker who publish stuff. And so there's some intersections between table talk and this other material. And we looked at how reliable the table talk. And Mikhail Nielsen, in one of the things he does in this book, is he finds some of these connections, and he shows that there's even instances where the note that's survived in German from Hitler, those notes attribute to Hitler things that were actually said by other people. So there's a lot. There's errors of memory. There's errors of choice of words. There's Martin Bormann's editing. So needless to say, even the German is not that reliable a source for the sayings of Hitler. But this myth grew that these were the authentic stenographic verbatim words of Hitler. And historians have been using this text this way for 50 years. And Nielsen has completely disproved this now. And the cool thing is that it was my article, which didn't answer hardly any of these questions. It just caught one fraud. But it inspired Nielsen to do this. And he just, this amazing amount of research he's done in this incredible book. It's now the definitive book on the Table Talk. And he just found so many examples. And then there's the myth of where did this manuscript come from? And that's not resolved. But there's art thieves involved. There's lies about when and where it was acquired and who paid for it. Lies about how many versions there are. And I think probably Nielsen has confirmed, and that we were worried about, is that how much of this is Genoud's forgery, because we know Genoud was connected to other forgeries, and so the worry is did he just forge some of these entries? And it seems like maybe not. It seems like he's not one who's edited. If there's any doctoring, it's Bormann's.
It seems like maybe not. It's just not an overwhelming endorsement of. So
this is the point. So let's talk about this guy, Francois Genoud.
Let me ask you a question. So, okay, you travel. So you're coming to visit me in Massachusetts, and you hear that there was a mechanical failure in the plane, and you go to the pilot and he says, "Everything okay?" And he goes, "It sounds like there may not be a problem with the plane." Are you going to get on that plane or not? Just a simple yes or no would be.
Yeah, I would not get on that rocket.
Okay,
this is a line that I used in this debate in California, deep rural California, at this conservative.
Oh, please.
And I went, is the New Testament text reliable? And I give my presentation, and one of the questions was these kinds of textual errors in all documents, like Tacitus and Josephus and stuff. I'm like, yeah. And if the Tacitus were instructions for building a rocket on that rocket, we're not that confident. We have 95% confidence in the text of Tacitus, but we don't base. We're not treating it like an inerrant text, right? Historians treat it like something absolutely certain. We're comfortable with that. We know we deal with that. But yeah, if it was instructions for getting on a rocket, I would.
Okay.
A rocket, I wouldn't have rocket.
Yeah,
I'm sitting here. If it was the question is, you have to be absolutely sure that Genoud not forge or doctor any of this document. I'm like, I'm not. Right? I can't put a bet on that. Certainly not my life. So Genoud is this Swiss banker. Anyway, go on.
No, I wanted to clarify that. That was an interesting statement. We're talking about the confidence in the. Yeah, I've been accused of hedging myself more than once, and I do because I grew up around lawyers and scientists. So I'm the child of people who spend their entire lives guarding and hedging, but nonetheless, that was a thing of beauty. So I had to comment on it. But please continue.
It illustrates how shady and this document is, right? So that's the problem. But well, Genoud himself, he was a Swiss banker who laundered all of the loot that Nazis stole from the Jews they killed.
And let me interrupt
and
real
he
quick.
Was later after.
And he was too, if I recall, the source for, if anybody saw that movie by Spike Lee, Inside Man. There's a banker in Inside Man who was actually based on that. So but that's so inspiration. So he's
probably.
All right, so I apologize. Please, so please continue.
One of his biographies is called, the title is The Dark Banker. in French, just to give you an idea. But he went on to, he financed terrorists after the war, like Carlos the terrorist was financed by Francois Junod. An unrepentant Nazi to his death. He committed suicide in 96 and was involved in all these shady deals, like tons of shady. He was going around Europe, like all Hitler memorabilia, so he could see. And he did this like immediately, like right after the war started, or war ended. He started like running around finding this stuff, and it was probably engaged in some stuff to collect this thing. You know, he probably either stole the manuscript or bought it from someone who stole the manuscript. Is the what we suspect. We have suspicions about this. We can't prove it. And the big question is, here's the big thing, and you've heard me talk about the German version. No one alive has seen it. Okay, so the German that we have access to, that supposedly Junod's manuscript, was a printed edition, came out in 1980. The people who produced that printed edition apparently were only given copies by Junod. They never saw the original manuscript, so no one has seen it, and no one knows where it is. It's lost somewhere, so it might actually still be out there. This is one of the things that Nilsson goes around speculating, where could it be? And we don't know. We don't know where the original manuscript is. It's out there somewhere, but no one's seen it. Even the people who published the German version based on it haven't seen it. On the French, they never see the German at all. They supposedly were shown some sheets, you know, like a con man from a distance. Look, German. Okay, here's the French. Translate from this. And somebody uncovered that the English version, and you might wonder, why was it translated from the French? What the hell, right? So Junod forced them to do that in a secret contract. So Hugh Trevor Roper, this famous historian, supposedly respectable, agreed to this term that they could only translate the English from his French translation of the German. And he does not tell the audience this, doesn't tell the reader this in the book. And this is the thing that Nilsson uncovered, is like it was in the contract. They were required to do this. And that's a weirdy thing to ask for in your contract. So that it's these little tidbits, and there's tons of these. I could go on and on of these strange little things that happen. And of course, Hugh Trevor Roper lied about this later to me. When I was doing research for this, and he was a British lord at that time, I was corresponding with him, and I was like, hey, look, I'm kind of finding that your English translation, and it wasn't his translation, he was the editor of the book, but he worked with the translators and supervised the translators. But I said, like, the translation you endorse that you published, based on the French, like, I've got all this evidence, like, have you ever noticed this? Do you have any comment? And his response to me was like, oh yeah, you know what? Like a couple years ago, I started noticing that too. And what does Nilsson do? Nilsson pulls out fucking contract 1952 or 53 or whatever. You fucking agreed to this. And it's just amazing. And I don't know. It just astonishes me how many lies we ran into and Nilsson uncovered about all of this stuff, and it's just incredible.
Empress Lizard, not a super chat, but absolutely worth. So here you go. Maybe the German was written in disappearing ink. Yeah.
Well, there's one question I have is there's a lot of references to copies, but Xerox wasn't. Well, I mean, Xerox's existed, but only just barely. So and there's reference. Back then, a photocopy would mean an actual photograph, right? Not a Xerox. So that's a different thing. Or so you could have didographs. But a lot of copies were just typed copies. You type a second one. So this is just like manuscript transmission, where you can have errors in transmission as you're typing, right? So like the typist could miscopy the original, or could deliberately change some things, right? So this big question is like, how many iterations are we from the original manuscript in whose version of it, right? So it's like, how are these copies being made? How reliable is the copying process? And if you thought all the other things are stacked on top of the problems of reliability on this, now you've got this on top of that. And without the original, we can find it's lost. Janud supposedly had it in Switzerland somewhere, in a vault in Switzerland, and no one knows where that vault is, or if it's still there even, or if someone just threw it away not knowing what it was. We don't really know. Like, it's got to be worth tons of money.
Yeah,
it's got to be worth money. That's the other thing, is like, whoever's sitting on it should frickin' sell it, right? But anyway, the big mysteries. And the thing is even this Picker, who's one of the secretaries who took these notes, the one who published his German version, which is just for some of the notes from 41 and 42, his version, which differs in subtle ways, his version also has disappeared. We don't know where that is. So we have some typed copies that were archived when they were publishing the second edition. The seconds of changes to the text made by Picker himself. And Picker, by the way, he idolized Hitler. He was a super fan of Hitler to his death. And so he modified a lot of the text to make Hitler sound better, or sound the way he wanted Hitler to sound.
Or the way he thought, at least, Hitler sound. Yeah, so he's right. His own bias is just like, well, what I think when Hitler said exterminate all the Jews, what he really meant was...
Right. You're thinking in the right direction.
Yeah.
No, Hitler could never have done that. So therefore he could never have said anything that would support that. He might have said things like, I don't know anything about what's going on. Like that. So it's like, so we've got a guy doctoring the text who specifically does not want to show Hitler knowing about the Holocaust. You can't use this as a source. So Holocaust deniers are screwed on this one. And the big irony in this is that, James Irving, who's one of the big Holocaust deniers, that's one of the leading historians who pushes this stuff. Even he, the table talk was shady. When he interacted with Janud, we got examples of his private notes. He's like, and so here's a Holocaust denier. Even he's like, I don't know, this is pretty shady. Anyway, so got to a key problem there.
All right. Well, so I got a $2 super chat from. Hold on. I want to. What was the? Okay, so $2 super chat from Empress Lizard. So, thank you very much. I will disagree with you. I think you can sort of rewrite and invent these things in your own with your biases. And if you would disagree with me, there's an expert in this by the name of Joseph Smith. I think if you chat with him, you will learn a thing or two about. But you're clearly right. Biased. Your bias towards reality is showing, and I think
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing. Is like, everyone involved in this kept rewriting their own stories. So Picker kept changing his story. Heim kept changing his story. Heim is one of these other secretaries. Everybody who knew Bormann kept changing their stories. And all these other Nazis involved kept changing their stories. And the Italian art historians, or the art thieves that were somehow involved in this and we're not entirely sure, even they were commenting. It's just like trying to unravel what fucking happened is frustrating, because it's just, you've got all these fucking con artists and thieves and liars involved in the transmission of these manuscripts, and you just can't provenance them back to any actual verbatim things that Hitler said. Now, some of it might have been things Hitler said, but it's exceedingly difficult now to really prove that. And certainly we can't trust that they're the verbatim words of Hitler. They're not. They're the words of someone else writing down what they think Hitler said or want Hitler to have said for posterity. And so that's a problem, basically, if you're going to use this as a historical source.
All right, so we've got another $2 super chat from Sinister Porpoise. Sinister, thank you so much for your super chat. The Sinister, is this like Mormon salamander letters? which escapes me.
I don't know that.
That escapes me.
There is a lot. So Mormonism does have a forgery problem, because there was famously
yes.
David Fitzgerald does the best book on the Mormons called The Mormons. I highly recommend The Mormon Fitzgerald. It's tongue-in-cheek, but also historically very well researched. But he one big chapter in it is there's this one particular guy who kept forging stuff and selling them to the Mormons as authentic Joseph Smith things or Brigham Young things or whatever. And so there's a ton of forgeries that they bought because we want this. And that story, and there's a bombing involved, there's murder, like that has a whole fascinating story behind it as well. So they have a forgery problem, but Hitler memorabilia also has a big forgery problem.
But those forgeries were the reverse. That guy, I think he lost a few fingers in a close encounter with an explosive. But that guy actually deliberately made the forgeries, made Joseph Smith admit that Mormonism was a fraud, do all these things, and the Mormon church bought it to bury it all.
Yeah.
So they bought it so that nobody would actually see what he was saying. And his forgeries
Genius
were
con
brilliant.
Artist, man.
Jesus,
This guy was that was that. What would you want to invent you could sell for a lot of money to the Mormon church? Exactly that. There's an episode of Law and Order Criminal Intent that what's the damn it, the Colbert Report. Colbert, what's his Stephen Colbert?
Stephen Colbert, yeah, Stephen.
Stephen Colbert plays a character in that episode based on the person we're talking about.
Really?
Forged
I did not know
this sort of like disproof of this religion. Yeah, it's not Mormonism. They changed the religion to something else. Changed the basic structure of the story. And so there's a murder, obviously. That's because it's criminal intent, so they trace a murder. But it all comes down to this Stephen Colbert religious fanatic who's like forging these things to, or either he was forging them or he was the one killing the forger. I don't remember now. I might have the story wrong. But if you look for the Stephen Colbert episode of Criminal Intent, it is actually a good episode. I highly recommend it. Then you'll find out if he's the forger or he's the one killing the forger. I don't remember now, but that's
the only
to do the same thing, to hide uncomfortable truth.
The only other thing, so the thing I like most about it was, of course, then the church at one point clearly believed, because they bought the forgeries, and they believed that he was a fraud, and rather than come clean or say anything like that, they just bought it and buried it. Right. But the other thing was, he really was.
They didn't say like, "Oh, that's a fraud." Yeah,
they carbon dated. They carbon dated the ink on the forgery, because the carbon dating the paper you can do, but does you almost no good, because you can get paper from that's that old. But carbon dating the ink, you can't really get ink that's that old, and you can't, when you commit it to the paper. Once that's done, it's essentially a timestamp. So they carbon dated the ink, and the ink dated to the correct years. So the way he had done that, and
it's not carbon dating.
You're right.
It wasn't carbon dating the ink. This is an interesting art fact. No, all inks, including all paints, inks, and so manufactured after Hiroshima.
Yeah, well, I think that's how they busted him. But the way they got
radioactive isotopes in them.
Yes,
exactly. So anything that had been written in the 19th century will not have these trace elements in them. So that's how there's a window, there's a wall between 1945 before and after, and that's how paint and ink can be dated, whether it was before or after 45, something like this. The document is to be pretty far pre-45, you can get them. To carbon date ink is not impossible, but I think it's only recently that we've acquired the ability to do it, because the amount of carbon in ink is very, very small, so it can be very difficult to do.
My recollection was the way they finally busted him was the Hiroshima thing, but they had carbon dated the ink. They were that concerned about it. They carbon dated the ink, and they got the date to the correct year that he said it was from. Mm-hmm. And so nobody could figure out how the hell did he get ink to the correct year because, and they asked him about this after the fact. So we've been busted. He had been busted by the Hiroshima thing. That's exactly. They started to suspect and like, wait a minute, we carbon dated the whole thing. It's correct. And they said, well, wait a minute, if we test for the radioactive isotopes in the ink, and then they found that the ink was newer. So how did he get the carbon date? How did he falsify the carbon dating on the ink? He made the ink. He went to libraries and got books that were that old, and they usually had pages in the back. He'd tear the pages out of the back, he'd burn the pages up, and then mix them into the ink. So you were carbon dating the pages that he had.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, that's spot on.
Dear Lord, the guy.
That's what they can do. Because that ability to carbon date ink, that's relatively new. Like that ability to carbon date ink is fairly new because it's the quantities are not great. Now we can carbon date super small samples. So like we can do a lot more carbon dating now with it's less destructive. So we could carbon date a lot more things than we used to do. But yeah, no, that's what they do. That's what once you tell a forger how we caught them, the next forger around that. Right? So like you're going to carbon date the papyrus. Well, go get old papyrus. Well, that's what happens with forgers of ancient ink. You can buy ancient ink on freaking eBay. Like ancient ink pots are a thing. Like they're ubiquitous and they get sold on the black market all the time. So you can go buy and reconstitute ancient ink. So you can actually forge ancient ink. So that's the problem with outing forgers is that once you tell them how we caught them, then the next forgers come along and find a way to trick you.
I appreciate it just because I appreciate the genius because you had said he was a genius and it's like he may be an evil genius, but he's a genius. And it was but also how stupid they are because he did end up getting blown up and he was people got a little ticked off. It turns out that I mean,
it's this weird confluence of stupidity and genius. It typifies a lot of criminals and Nazis. They're not even good liars. They're terrible liars, but they're liars, the unrepentant liars.
So I what I'd like to do is this. I'd like to, maybe start wrapping up 15 or 20 minutes if that works for you and if you can hang out for that long. What I'd like to do is I'd like to finish up this story and then I'd like to figure out. So I knew I knew a lot of what you had said, but my understanding was that currently there is some stuff that's published that is considered authentic, and it is the notes from the secretary. From at least one secretary, maybe two, and some from other people who had attended the table talk, and then you certainly, at a minimum, did have these dinner table conversations. So I'd like to now that you've thoroughly told us all the things you don't know, which we're really quite clear on. Thank you very much. You've clarified. We get it.
What do we do know?
There's a lot you don't know. Yeah. I'm glad to hear it. Wrap up. I'd like to finish. I certainly want to give you time to finish this and then get on to what we do know and what we can learn from it. But please.
What can we positively say? We can't. So Nilsson did confirm this. So this isn't something that I confirmed. This is what Nilsson did. He did confirm that these people really were involved. So like Picker, who wrote notes, really did this. Heim, who wrote notes, really did do this. Mueller, who's another fellow that I didn't even know because he wasn't even mentioned in a lot of this. Is a third guy. He really did do it and really was involved. The rants really did exist. The notes really were taken. So that's all true. But the problem is you can't non-fallaciously get from that to the table talk we have today is reliable because there's all the editing and errors and stuff that intervene. So like the notes were being made in people's own voice, not Hitler's. Notes were being made often from memory for like a day later. They were subject to the biases of the people writing the notes. Bormann edited the notes. We have like handwritten changes where he's deliberately altering the stuff. Bormann edited everything. So it's mostly voice, more than Hitler's. And then we have the question of provenance. We have no original manuscripts, so that they all went through editing of different people and copying where there's many opportunities to alter or forge entries. So the documents held by highly unreliable people, like Picker, in love with Hitler. He's not a reliable source to hold on to this manuscript. Janud, who's forged like fake statements of Hitler in his French translation, is connected to all this shady business. It's like he's not the best person to have had hold of this manuscript. So if you add all these things together, the fact that we can show, and we can, that the people who made these notes really existed, the table talks really happened, the notes really were made, we can't get from there to trust the table talk, any version of it, and there's multiple versions. All right. So, yeah. And then the English translation, then that's just worse altogether, because that's based on the French, which wildly mistranslates what Hitler said. And that's the thing that I caught. And that's all of this in motion. And now Nilsson is like fully Dan Browned this and gotten the full skinny on what we can and can't say. So if you really want to know what can we say and what can't we say, Nilsson's book has got it. And it is a read and a fast story of what happened and how historians struggled at questions like this.
Yeah, that's one reason. It's one reason I left being a historian to people who are slightly insane. Yes, it's not my line of work. Yeah.
It does require a kind of madness, I have to say. You need to be desperately passionate for your field. I don't know if I've mentioned this on the show before, but like one of the main things I learned in graduate school at Columbia is that 99% of what you do as a historian is confirm that something is useless. So like 99% of my time in the library reading books, reading articles, and so on is just to confirm that this book or that article has nothing useful for me. And that's 99% of your job, is just to just read tons and tons of things just to verify that there's nothing in them that's of use to your point, to what you're researching. And this does make you very knowledgeable because you read 99 times more literature than you would have otherwise. So you've learned tons of weird, minor, trivial things that don't relate to whatever thesis you were pursuing. So it's useful. But nonetheless, you have to, can you imagine the amount of hours you have to put in that if any utilitarian would say are completely wasted? You've got to be passionate for your subject to like stick it out, basically. And then not get a definitive answer by the end. That's the other thing. It's like you might not have a definitive answer after all that work. Right.
I love how you turned Dan Brown into a verb. That's the first time I've heard that. Yeah. Okay. I like it. All right. Well, and
it's probably my own neologism.
I like it. We got a couple of interesting comments in live chat. One that I really liked. The Titan pointed out, because we're talking about lying and forgeries and what you had said, but Titan pointed this out, and I like the way he had kind of coined this expression. He said this a couple of times, but the way to teach a child to lie effectively is to punish them as soon as they get caught.
Yeah. I see. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one. And then Sinister came up with a corollary to that. The best way to teach your children how to hack a computer is to put parental controls on it.
Oh yeah. Well, here's the thing for the parents who are watching. You may or may not know. You probably might not know whether your child is a sociopath or not. It's genetic. But if you have the genes for sociopathy, you will not automatically grow to become a sociopath. You won't necessarily acquire antisocial personality disorder. A particular parental environment combined with the genes does this. Now, anti-personality disorder, aka psychopathy, is defined by the conjunction of three things, which is diminished fear response, disinhibition, and meanness. Meaning you're uninhibited. You take drugs, do whatever. You're mean. You have like no empathy, and you don't experience fear. And it's shown scientifically that all of this stems from the combination of the root of this is that genetically the absence of a fear response, such that if you base your parenting style on fear, so in other words, you want your child to be afraid to disobey or afraid to not figure out how you feel or be empathetic, everything you want to do to like make your child moral or empathetic or compassionate or disciplined, even if you base your method on fear and they have the genes for sociopathy, it won't work because they aren't afraid of you. There's nothing you can do that was going to scare them. They don't fear anything. And so what they do is their motivation comes from things like desire or so they desire a certain outcome. So they figure out how to manipulate manipulate someone to get that outcome. And if you never teach them empathy, if you never teach them discipline, they never acquire it. And so they become antisocial personalities. And it all comes from, if you have a fear-based method, it will fail. So the only way to make sure that they grow up to be like an empathetic, disciplined person is to not use fear as your primary motivator. You got to find out other ways to motivate them to be moral, other ways to motivate them to care about what people think and feel, so that they start learning how to model, right? Model other minds and acquire empathy. You need a non-fear-based method of parenting. And anyway, that's a maybe that if we'd figured out in 1900, we wouldn't have had Nazis. I don't know. So
shoot, hold on. Email from YouTube. You have been demonetized in perpetuity. Oh, okay. I'm sure this discussion had nothing to do with that. Wait, we were teaching how to make a sociopath. He was saying not how to make. Oh dear Lord. Okay.
Not. Yeah.
Speaking of getting taken out of context,
anyone really wants to make a sociopath. No one really wants to make a sociopath.
Sociopaths do,
but
okay.
No, they don't want competition.
I suppose that. Yeah, no, they don't have a desire. They just don't lack the. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Wonderful. Well, so all right. Well, having well, I have to say thank you so much for coming on. I had read a number of excerpts from the Table Talk, and you rendered all of that completely moot. So, gee, I just appreciate you coming on here, talking about a waste of time.
Yeah, even if you want to get at the manuscript, you've got to read German. It only exists in German and only exists in one printed edition, which we don't know how reliable that is. So there's no other way to get at it. There's no English translation. So, yeah.
Titan, quote, this stream wasn't going to be monetized based on the title anyway. Yeah, I know. I got to work on my titles. Well, to tell you the truth, you could tell I think like an academic. You know what? This is an educational program. It's an educational program, and I like, so my, you know, when the first thumbnail that we did of this was, you saw a big picture of Hitler. And the reason was because we're going to be talking about Hitler. Somebody was just like, you have Dr. Carrier coming on your stream, and Hitler is on the thumbnail. Just like, yes, so that if people want to learn more about the subject as they're going through the archives on In Time, they can go by subject. Like, people want to hear Carrier. It's just like, talk about Hitler. I don't understand but it finally linked. I was just like, maybe change the thumbnail and put you on it because you're the guest and all that. But I was like, I still think like the academic. It's like, no, go by subject, and then you can see them. Oh, dear Lord.
But it is to Nazism, to combat Nazi apologetics, and to combat Christian abuse of the sources. Like, people need to know. They need to know where the scholarship is and what it's found, and why we can't trust this source. Why you shouldn't even bother buying the English edition of the Table Talk. That's important. I think it's important. I think even the Anti-Defamation League would agree with what we're doing here. Is just disseminating this, and especially if you read Nilsson's book. Like, if you had any idea of Nazis being honest people, it will be dispelled by the end of that book. Like, literally every fucking person, like every person involved in the story that he runs into, everyone, like, he says, well, this story that's a lie. He lied, and here's why we know he lied. And like, oh my God, how many fucking liars are there in the story? And it's just, nope, it's just Nazis. They're just liars.
Who knew?
I was just, I really, like, literally, like, halfway through the book, I'm like, oh my God, this is like almost becoming a running joke. But it's spot on. That's the truth.
All right. Well, we've been dropping links to your website and links to your Twitter and Facebook. We also, if you have some time and would like to join us in the Discord, I will not be joining. My throat is,
those who want to know, my GSR original 2003 through 2004 article in this book, I republished all my peer-reviewed in Hitler, Homer, Bible, Christ. And for those who want to know, why is this book titled Hitler, Homer, Bible, Christ? Now they know. There's an article in German Studies Review in this about Hitler. So,
and the link to that is also in the description.
Explained.
That's in the description, and the link to your new book.
I do. Nielsen's book is great too.
The link to your new book is in the description as well. So we appreciate that one. The
new book, yeah.
Yeah. The no, not this the one you're reaching for. No, the other one. That's in the description too. I think I put that one in there. No. I'm talking Donald Trump's Table Talk.
I mean this one.
Donald Trump's Table Talk. You put that in. That was your next project, right?
Oh my God!
It's not out
You're
yet,
probably on 50 years from now. Yes, there will be a disputed, bogus,
I totally won the election.
Reminiscences.
Yeah. Well, if it sounds sane, the
private thoughts of Donald Trump, right? Like I heard him say this. Trust me.
Listen, if he had private thoughts, this world would be a much better place. So.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
So if you're up for joining the Discord, we can get you a link, and there's also a link in the Discord. I can send you one. I won't be. My voice, I cannot believe it has held out as well as it can. I've been popping cough drops and all that other stuff. But thank you so much for coming on. It's been a delight.
I think I can join. Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, I always love coming on. Yeah. And I think I can join the Discord for at least until 8 my time, which is California time.
I know some people, Dave will certainly want to talk to you. He's just warning about Dave. He's a contrarian. Whatever you say, he disagrees with. The son of a bitch. So we started having some technical issues, and then somebody said, what kind of CPU, what kind of chip are you running that show on? I said, hold on, let me find out. And then he goes, oh, it's probably a Dorito. I work my ass off for respect and dignity and, chewing my mouth open on occasion, but that's honestly not. You don't fault me for that, do you?
Don't go spreading the myth that computer chips are in Doritos. The QAnon people will stop buying Doritos and it'll crash the economy.
This package of Cool Ranch Doritos brought to you by Pfizer.
Computer chips.
Yep.
Computer chips. That I just got the joke there. But okay, anyway.
So yeah. Well, that was the computer. Yeah. So you'll enjoy him. He's around all the time. All right. Well. So thank you for joining us. Was there anything else that you wanted to talk about or plug before we go? But it's been a delightful show. So thank you.
Yeah. No, we covered all the things. I think if people want to know more, they know where to look now. And all things Richard Carrier are at richardcarrier.info. So I teach courses every month online. I do many other things. So if you want to find all of the stuff, it's all on my Twitter feed, my Facebook feed, and all of that are at richardcarrier.info. So check it out.
All right. So, Dr. Carrier, thank you very much. It's been a delight. For those of you who are going to be joining us tomorrow, it is going to be Joe Serious Mind and Nate the Lawyer, and we're going to be discussing the various shootings. We are going to be covering the difference between murder 1, 2, and 3, a whole bunch of other things, Porpoise, but and the what that officer is looking at for the shooting and the Floyd verdict, which is it's going to go to the jury very soon. I think on Monday is the closing arguments, and Nate's been covering it. So all that's going to be tomorrow. Dr. Carrier, thank you once again so much, and look forward to catching you all tomorrow. Have a good night.